Everything was normal in the beginning. Our modest house on the outskirts of the city, our small garden with its dying grass, our old car in the driveway. Life was monotonous, beautiful in its monotony. I am Yusuf, my wife is Salma, and our little daughter Noor. We were an ordinary family, until that thing decided to make us the center of its horrific world. It started subtly, so subtle we doubted our own senses. I was sitting in the evening in front of the TV when I felt that familiar sensation, the feeling that someone is watching you. I turned toward the living room window overlooking the front yard. Darkness had already settled in, and the distant streetlight flickered with a weak orange glow. There, at the edge of the shadow where the light faded, stood a man. I couldn't make out his features, just a silhouette, tall and unnaturally thin. He stood completely still, unmoving, not even seeming to breathe. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked, and he was still there. I rose slowly and approached the window, placing my hand against the cold glass. At that moment, he moved. He didn't walk away. He simply slid backward, deeper into the darkness, and vanished. I shook my head, telling myself it was just a shadow or the fatigue of a long day. But Salma saw him the next day. She was washing dishes at the kitchen window, which faced the backyard. Suddenly, she screamed, a muffled, frightened cry. I ran to her. There, near the old mulberry tree. She pointed with a trembling finger. I looked. The tree was tall, its tangled branches like claws, and crouched on one of the lower limbs was a dark figure. Not in a natural position, but hunched forward at a sharp angle, as if its neck were broken or its joints didn't work like a human's. We stared for a few seconds, and then it jumped. It didn't jump down, but backward, an impossible, unnatural leap, disappearing behind the shadows of the tall fence. Anxiety began infiltrating our meals, our quiet conversations. We checked the windows constantly, closed the curtains early, and raised the TV volume to drown out the silence. But children always see more than we do. One night, I woke to Noor's piercing cry. I rushed to her room. She was standing in her crib, pointing toward the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. The thin man, Daddy. The thin man is laughing at me. I looked out the glass. The moon was full, bathing the front yard in a silver hospital-like light, and in the center of the yard, standing in a patch of dry grass, was him. This time, the light was enough for me to see, and I wish it hadn't been. He was over 2 meters tall. His body was gaunt, emaciated, like skin stretched over irregular bones. He wore an old tattered coat that dragged on the ground, but his face, he had no face, just a flat, pale surface where a face should have been. I couldn't see eyes or a nose or a mouth, and yet I felt, with absolute certainty, that he was staring straight at us, at my daughter, and that he was smiling. A wide smile without lips. He moved. He didn't walk. He glided across the grass as if floating on water. He approached the window slowly, confidently. I grabbed Noor, wrapped her in her blanket, and backed out of the room, refusing to look behind me. I heard a faint sound, a long scratching on the glass coming from her window. The next morning, we found it. On the outside of Noor's window, where that thing had stood, was a handprint, but not a human one. It was long, impossibly thin, with elongated fingers and an unnaturally long palm. Each finger seemed to have 2 extra joints, and the substance that formed the print. It wasn't mud or dirt. It was greasy, pale yellow like old fat. The smell was nauseating, rotting meat and damp soil. That's when we called the police. A polite officer came, listened to our story with practiced detachment, examined the handprint, which had begun to melt in the sun, leaving yellow streaks on the glass, and filed our report under disturbing prowler. He advised us to install security cameras and brighter outdoor lights. We felt frustrated, but also slightly reassured. Maybe we were exaggerating. Maybe it was just some desperate, troubled person. We installed 2 cameras, one at the front, one in the back, and we enjoyed a single night of false safety. In the middle of that night, motion alerts from the cameras went off on my phone. My heart clenched. I opened the app with a trembling hand. The screen was black at first. Then the front yard appeared in grainy black and white. It was empty. Suddenly, a figure slid into the frame. It was him. He stood directly beneath the camera, then lifted his head, that smooth, featureless head, and looked straight into the lens. He couldn't see me, yet somehow he knew. He knew I was watching. Then he did the thing that terrified me more than his presence. He stepped back a little and began to dance. His movements were mechanical, jerky, violating the rules of physics. He twisted in impossible shapes, folded his legs behind his neck, then snapped upright again. He spun rapidly, then stopped instantly, all in perfect, horrifying silence. Then he stopped, raised his long finger, and pointed at our house, at our bedroom window. He vanished from the frame in a blur. That night was the turning point. It was no longer about watching. It was a message. I'm here, and I'm coming inside. Small things began happening inside the house, the smell of damp soil and rotten meat filling the hallway and disappearing. Soft whispers, unintelligible, coming from room corners when we were alone. Noor's toy shifting positions. Her favorite doll once appeared sitting on a chair facing the window, its body burnt as if left under a magnifying glass. One night, while we tried to sleep, we heard scratching. Not on the windows this time. On the walls. On the inside walls of our bedroom. A slow, deliberate scraping, like claws dragged across plaster. Salma clung to me, trembling like a leaf. "He's inside the house, Yusuf. He's in here with us." She was right. We had tried convincing ourselves that the danger was outside, but the rules had changed. He was slipping into our world, into our safe space, leaving marks like someone tagging their property. Then came the night he almost took Noor. I woke to the sound of a door opening. Noor's door. We ran. Her door was wide open. The curtain at the window fluttered in a cold night breeze, even though the window was closed. Her crib was empty. My heart shattered. Salma screamed her name. We heard a muffled, childish giggle from the front of the house. We rushed to the living room. Noor was standing in the middle of the room, in her little pajamas, holding her burnt doll. She stared directly at the large front window, smiling a sleepy, unnatural smile. She said in a voice not quite her own, raspy, wrong. "He said he wants to play. He said he'll take me to his garden. It has many trees, like fingers." We looked where she was staring. There, on the front porch, illuminated clearly under the new light we installed, stood the thin man. His faceless head was pressed against the glass, distorted against it, as if trying to push through. That yellowish, greasy substance spread across the glass where he touched it. His long arm was raised, and his finger pointed directly at Noor. That was more than we could endure. I grabbed Noor, still in her strange, dreamy daze, and Salma climbed into the car beside her. She sped toward her family's house in the city. I stayed behind. I couldn't run. My fear and anger had transformed into something else, a burning resolve. This was my home, and I wouldn't let this thing steal our peace. I remained in the house, now a prison of memories and terror. The silence was heavier than sound. Every shadow moved, every creak warned of his presence, but he didn't appear. A whole night passed, me wandering with a stick in my hand, checking every door, every closet, every dark corner. Nothing. At dawn, with the first threads of light, a feeling crept in. Maybe I had won. Maybe he left. Maybe he only wanted the child and had failed. I sat on the couch in the living room, exhausted, the stick between my knees. Then I heard it. A long, sad exhale, inhuman, coming from right behind me. From the forever dark corner of the room where sunlight never reached. I turned slowly. He was sitting there, on the floor, in the corner. His long legs folded up to his chest, his long arms wrapped around himself, his smooth head bent downward. He looked smaller, sad, isolated. Then he lifted his head, that featureless surface where a face should be turned toward me, and I felt, without doubt, that he was communicating with me. Not with words, but with waves of emotions and memories pouring into my mind like venom. I saw images, an old abandoned house deep in the forest, a lonely boy, deformed, shunned, years of isolation, hunger, not for food, but for connection, for family. I saw how he watched people's homes from afar, the warmth he was denied, how he chose us, how he saw in Noor an innocence that wouldn't fear him, in Salma a care he never knew, and in me, perhaps a father he never had. His sorrow was immense, ancient as mountains, but beneath it there was something else, a feral hunger, a possessiveness. He didn't just want companionship. He wanted us to belong to him, to live with him in his shadows, forever. He opened his long arms, welcoming, horrifying, an invitation. I ran. With all the shame and weakness a man can feel, I fled my own home, leaving the door wide open behind me. I got in my car and drove away. Now we live in a small apartment downtown. The lights never go out. The noise never stops. We are safe, or so they say. But I know the truth. Because when I wake up at night and check on Noor, who no longer sleeps alone, I sometimes see, reflected on the 10th floor window, a silhouette standing behind me in the darkness. Tall, thin, featureless. And this thing does not follow houses, ladies and gentlemen. It follows families. And we will always be his watched family, whether we like it or not. A silhouette standing behind me in the darkness. Tall, thin, featureless. And this thing does not follow houses, ladies and gentlemen. It follows families. And we will always be his watched family, whether we like it or not.